famine. Yogita Limai, BBC News, Herat.
Let's turn to the strike action across the UK. Tens of thousands of workers have walked out in disputes over pay and jobs. Now, this comes as unions edge closer to coordinated industrial action. So could there be a general strike? Well, only the Trades Union Congress, the TUC, can call a general strike, which would see workers from a number of industries walk out simultaneously. At last month's TUC Congress, a motion backed by Unison, Unite, the PCS and other unions was passed unanimously, calling for a working group to be set up to coordinate a mass campaign of action over pay and condition. And the head of the PCS, that's the Public and Commercial Services Union, which represents civil servants, has said that he's in active discussions with other unions to coordinate strikes in December to maximise the impact of the action. Well, we can now talk to the head of the PCS, Mark Serwotka, who joins us now. So just how close are you to getting this coordinated strike action, basically a general strike?
Well, I think the first thing that has to be said is that the question people should ask is why are there nearly 30 different trade unions in Britain balloting for industrial action or have members on strike? And that's because we live in an unprecedented cost of living crisis. And whether you work on the trains, you're a postal worker, or you represent the people I represent working in job centres or the border force, you can't be expected to have a 2% pay rise when inflation is 11%. And the government is doing nothing to alleviate the poverty that means members that I represent in the civil service, 40,000 of them are using food banks. So that's why so many unions are voting to go on strike, including my own, and we've announced strikes over the next month in the Department for Transport, the Border Force, Home Office and DEFRA as a first wave of strike action. So it's inevitable if there are so many strikes that unions will talk to each other because we want our strikes to be effective, because the more pressure we put on the government, the more chance there is that they will have to see reason and do something about the cost of living crisis that we are trying to get out of.
Mark, let's focus in on your union, the PCS, because you touched upon it there, the border force control people, basically the people that check passports. We're coming up to the Christmas period, people travelling. You're talking about representing the people that make sure that the highways, the motorways are safe, highway maintenance. People will be travelling, will be using the roads a lot because of the strike action on the rails. This is going to be a very difficult situation for a lot of people just trying to get around over Christmas.
Well, there's no doubt we are going to see significant disruption over Christmas. But the fact is these strikes have not yet happened. We've notified our intention to do them. So everybody's worry and angst and anger should be directed at the government. Because how can it be that the government sits there knowing that people are in poverty, using food banks, and does nothing about train workers and postal workers, lecturers and civil servants who are in the pits of despair? So the blame for any disruption, I think, is very squarely at the foot of the government. And if they found money to alleviate this poverty that many people are facing, the strikes wouldn't happen.
When it comes to who pays for increases, how would you want that to be then in that case? How does this get paid? Because ultimately, if borrowing goes up, then it all gets pushed into the long grass, into the future, and it's the younger generation that ends up paying for these increases.
Well, I think there's 2 points I'd make. First of all, I think nobody should lose sight of the mess we're in is entirely down to the Conservative government. People's mortgages doubled, their rents have increased, there's a cost of living crisis, not because of anything working people have done, but it's because of what politicians did. So it cannot be right that the people who suffer most and are asked to pay the biggest price are the ones who did not cause the problem, it was caused by the government. Secondly, the argument that we can't afford pay rises, I think, is false. Most people are accepting, I think economists are accepting, that if the economy is going to shrink, it is a fact that when you pay a nurse or a teacher or a job centre worker a decent rate of pay, one that means their living standards don't fall, they increase, they don't, like the wealthy, run off with that money and put it in the Cayman Islands or invest it overseas. They spend it, and they spend it in the economy. They spend it in local shops, in businesses, supporting the private sector organisations by buying their goods. So we don't increase our economic prosperity as a country if we ask millions of people to be poor. And I think, therefore, any pay rises are ones that will have an economic boosting effect, as well as having the effect of removing many people from the pits of despair. And that's why we think our pay rises are both affordable, economically sensible, and right for individual working people.
Mark Serwotka, General Secretary of the PCS. Thank you.